Hi everyone, as always, I hope you're all doing well and staying safe in these times. Today's lab session, we're basically going to be creating like a maze from a text file, and we're going to be moving a player around in it. Let me show you what the outcome of it will be. We're basically going to be creating this thing where you have a maze of sprites and a player that's allowed to move around it, and it can't like walk over any of the bricks, and it can only walk through this grass. Okay. But it's hopefully really easy. Let's get started. Ignore my coronavirus. Okay, so as always, to start any of these things, we go to our lovely GitHub thing and we open. I reorganized it, by the way, don't mind that. We open our skeleton, as always. That's how we always start. We copy the skeleton, we paste it here, we run it to make sure it works and there's no errors. And good, it works. Okay, now we start to think. Okay, before I approach something like this, I usually like to gather all of my materials, meaning I gather all of my pictures, like to put them together. I do my text file and everything. So let's do that. Basically, go and gather like images of the things that you want to be like the walkable ground. فهنا anything, like we're gonna be able to walk on grass, but I just chose grass. You can choose anything. And I chose bricks for the boundaries, and I chose a picture for my player. And basically for your player, as always, choose something with no background. Like notice how this image has no background. There's websites on there that you can, like if you choose an image with a white background, you can upload to the website and it'll automatically remove the background. But make sure you do that, and make sure that all of the dimensions match and that they're squares. That's very important. If you want to use this code, because the way like there's some variables in it that are set specifically for a certain size, you just have to make sure that your pictures are of size 512 by 512. Like use whatever photo editing thing that you have. Oh, that's weird. And just make sure it's a square. Like whatever the dimensions are, make sure that they're square. And yeah, let's take a look at our text file. This is the text file that represents the maze. I'm choosing to have my text file represent as a character. But basically, anything that's an H, that's where I want my character to not be able to move. So my player can't walk on anything that's H, and anything that's G, they can actually walk on that. But see how this maze is exactly like this one. So what happened? Okay. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so see, H, 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 and then here's the brick. Here we have these two H's, and that's this thing. We have these two H's, which is this thing. Ignore the T's that I have here. I wanted to be fancy and like add actual trees and stuff like that just for fun, but I didn't. You don't need to, but ignore that. We'll handle it. So yeah, let's close this. Okay, and let's go back to our skeleton. Here's my skeleton again. And let's get started. Okay, we always declare all of our variables that we need to initialize here. Okay, so what do we need to initialize? We need really two things. Okay, we have the SFML side, the front end side, as you could think about it, front end, and we have like the back end side, which means our like regular C++ stuff. So of course I need to store this maze, this text file. I need to store it in some thing in my code. In some 2D array, I need to have this. These are characters. You can have this as an integer, which in the project I believe this is just going to be ints to represent your maze. فمثلا in the places where you can't walk, you'll have -1. In the places that you can walk, you'll have 1 instead of the G. So your H's would just be -1s and your G's will be like 1s or whatever. But yeah, so in that case, you would store it in an integer 2D array. But in our case, these are characters. So we need to store this maze text file into a character text file. But we have to store it into something like maze Oh, I'll just name it R because that's how I have it, of like the dimensions. This is a 7 by 7 dimension array. So yeah, that's why it's 7 by 7. So that's one thing. Let's not start. Let's think before we start. So that's one thing. We have our character 2D array, and the other thing is the things that actually pop up on the screen. So like my sprites, and the sprite is just an SFML type. Like it's just like like a like a little square thing that you can add a texture onto. If you remember our circle, the circle is in the shape of a circle, and you can add a texture onto it. But our sprite is in the shape of a square. So yeah, it's really exactly the same idea as the circle like we did last lab, but there's just no set radius. But everything else applies. You can move it around, you can do everything with it, you can draw it to the screen, everything. Okay, so who are my sprites? My sprites here in this case, like last time we had two circles, or you could call them sprites, yani, like two things, like two shapes with pictures on top of them. This time we have 7 by 7 different ones. Yani every time I see H's here, this is gonna be my brick thing, and every time I see G, that's gonna be my grass. So I'm gonna have 7 by 7, which my math is awful. So what is that? It'll have 49 sprites. So I need an array of sprites, right? An SFML sprite. That's one thing. But let me make a comment of that. Need my car 2D array. Need my sprite 2D array. And finally, I need my player. Okay? My player is going to be a sprite, yes, but it's not going to be included in this array because the player is moving on top of the maze. Need my player. So these are the things that I will declare and initialize, and I'm going to do all of that here. But let's start with the character 2D array. In order to do that, we have to read from a file. But actually, excuse me, I'm just looking through the code because I had written this down. I already did the code, but I'm just making sure the syntax is correct. Okay, so that when I upload it onto the GitHub repo, there's like no confusion. Okay, but let's read from our file into our character 2D array. Void, we'll call the function init just to initialize, and this function is going to open the file. It's going to open the maze text file. It's going to parse it. It's going to take each and every character, and it's going to store it in my character 2D array. And let me make sure, let me just ask myself where I did it last time. Okay, for my character 2D array, let's declare it in the main function. Okay, need my character 2D array for car. Let's name it R of, okay, let's create rows and columns here. Const, remember this is a 7 by 7 maze. So I'm just so that I don't keep writing 7 in the code, like what if one day I need to change it, I'll declare the rows and columns up here. So this is a global variable, and it's a constant integer. My arrays of size rows by columns. Okay, here it is. And I need to initialize it. So basically, what I'm going to do in my initialization function, I'm gonna open the text file, and I'm gonna take it in, and at the same time I'm also going to fill in my sprite, my sprite with it as well. Actually, let's declare the sprite first. Let's declare it, let's actually listen to my comment and declare the variables and then do initializations. The sprite. Let's call it, I guess, maze of rows and also columns. Okay. And then what else do we need? And my player is a sprite. My player is a sprite, we'll call it player. Okay. So for the initialization,